Question number 4, Chris Hipkins.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Education. Does she stand by her reported statement that student achievement would absolutely be a factor in a review of the school funding system?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, yes, in the context of the statement in which it was given, which was, we're very much at the beginning of this process, so no decisions at all have been made as to which variables and in what way they'll be used. But will student achievement and learning be one of them? Absolutely. I emphasise for the member, this is a review and no decisions have yet been made.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Chris Hipkins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Will she rule out imposing financial penalties on schools that do not meet student achievement targets? If not, why not?
The Honourable Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, as I said in answer to the primary question, we're in a review. We're at the very beginning of the stage. I'm neither ruling anything in nor out.
So that's a no. Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Chris Hipkins.
Why did she categorically rule out considering a greater role for national standards and NCEA achievement data in school funding and teacher pay decisions in March last year, only to then say that those things would absolutely be part of the funding system?
The Honourable Hipkins.
The member is confusing industrial relations with funding for student achievement.
Supplementary question. Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Chris Hipkins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. When she was asked about the use of national standards data in November last year and said, quote, "What we always planned to use it for and what we are now using it for is to help target resources to where they're most needed," end quote, did she mean that data will be used as a component to determine how much funding schools receive?
The Honourable Hipkins.
What she meant was that we will use it to inform teaching practice in schools, and I'm pleased to tell you that more and more of that is occurring.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Order. Supplementary question, Chris Hipkins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Did the tender process for the new $100 million funding system state the objective was, quote, to manage the investment in the education system by linking enrolment, attendance, achievement and funding? If so, why?
The Honourable Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, the member is confusing a review of resourcing.
Order.
I'm trying to do that. Is confusing a review of resourcing and an ICT system that is being designed to support the current and future systems.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Chris Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, will she now rule out the linking of student achievement information to school funding decisions? If not, why not?
The Honourable Hipkins.
To say again, we are at the beginning of the review process. We are neither ruling in nor out a full discussion about what should comprise a new funding system, but that it should focus on how well kids are learning and achieving, which is, after all, the core business of education, is not a discussion we're having at the moment.
What's so hard about that, Grant?
Order. Order. Question number 5, the right